Hello, and welcome to That Tech Pod, where we discuss all things e-discovery, cybersecurity, data privacy, and tech innovations. I'm Laura Milstein,
And I'm Kevin Albert.
and each week we bring on heavy hitters from the industry to help us break down these topics. And today we have a very exciting topic and a very exciting guest. Kevin, do you want to tell everyone who are we talking to?
Meredith Kildow is the president of Consilio. She is an accomplished operations and sales executive with more than 25 years of experience across multiple industries. Her areas of expertise include expanding go-to-market strategies and bringing high-performance teams together through both organic and inorganic growth. Meredith is a champion of combining data-driven approaches with an emphasis on people, culture, and transformation to grow motivated, balanced teams. As president, Meredith is focused on driving excellence in Consilio's combined commercial business lines, including revenue, account management, and operational delivery across their global client base. Meredith, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
We're really excited to have you on. And before we actually get started, your background is beautiful. Can you send me that? I need that. I want to lie to myself every day and be like, look at these trees.
I will definitely send it to you and not mention the messy bookshelf that it's hiding. So yes.
It's amazing. I love it. I love it so much. Clearly, Kevin and I went with just like an aura. This is our
That's right.
aura today?
Okay.
Unless anybody knows about auras and they're like bad colors, then it's not our aura. But yes, we're so excited to have you on. You have an amazing background, not just the one we talked about, but your actual background, which crosses a lot of worlds that don't always overlap, which is super cool. I mean, you have sales, operations, consulting, and leadership. Wow. How did that journey ultimately lead you to become the president of Consilio?
Yeah, it's been a long and winding journey for sure. I think there's a couple of threads through all of it, which is in every industry I've ever worked in, there's a heavy emphasis on professional services and services generally. So, some of that has stayed with me through all the different iterations. And, I actually think you find this a lot in the leadership at Consilio and why it was such a good fit for me ultimately is we have a lot of folks who've worn a lot of hats in leadership positions. And I just think it gives you a lot of empathy for the folks that you work with. So when I was the chief revenue officer for, years, because I'd had an operational background prior, I think the way that I approached my operations partners at the time was with a lot of understanding of that, role in itself. And at the time, my operational leaders had worn sales hats in the past. And so I just think it gives you the ability to meet people where they are a little bit more. And so in that way, there's actually quite a few of us who have been scattered across, different roles and different industries. But, on some level, a leadership role is really about making sure that you are, instilling confidence, motivating your teams, and at the end of the day, moving the rocks and the challenges that would inhibit them from moving forward, right? And so whether that's leading a sales team or leading an operations team or now both, for me, some of those threads are very similar regardless of, the particular practice.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I think the operational background kind of is pretty unique in this role for you. Do you think operators view AI differently than
Mm.
technologists or sales leaders?
I think there's the sort of obvious layer of operators tend to problem solve, right? Like think of ways to fix and solution. And so I think the obvious answer is sort of, maybe operators lend themselves more to efficiency gains, whereas somebody carrying a quota and thinking like from a sales perspective would think about how could I drive revenue or top line. But I think there's something about where we are all at with this, which is like we're all trying to figure it out. In some ways, it's a nice sort of level set because I think that we are all every day uncovering different ways that it can do both of those things, right? I mean, they're not exclusive, but I guess in that way, I would say I think just operators tend to solution, and so I think if I look across our team, I think people are always looking for ways that not only for ourselves internally, but for our clients, right? Like, how could we better solve that problem or challenge?
Have you ever had that position where you're like, no, I don't even want to solve this?
I mean, well, I think there's a lot of challenges that AI can't necessarily solve. And
Yeah,
so, I think a scalpel is better than a hammer right now in terms of how you're broadly approaching problem solving if you're going to use AI. I mean, I think
yeah,
one of the things we talk a lot about just how we're positioned sort of as an alternative legal services provider is that we really think of ourselves as like a leader and an owner of the orchestration of the workflows and the governance, helping our clients really like weave the tools through their workflows. I think the sort of blunt approach of like this tool will solve everything and it's a silver bullet, like especially in the complexity of the kind of work that we do, that
yeah.
isn't really a thing.
So before we get too much into tools or anything,
Yeah.
I have a debate here and I need to
Okay.
talk about it. And I have this debate with so many people on this podcast. And so if you're listening and you're like this again, yes, this again. So if somebody were to say to me, what is a consultant? What do they do? My response is they take meetings. It's a person who has a lot of meetings. They have a meeting for a meeting to have a meeting to
That's
discuss
fine.
the meeting to plan for the meeting. That's what a consultant is. But for somebody who wants a, what do you mean? What is that? Can you break that down? Like, in your opinion, for you, you're a consultant and you're at a company that's what I'm hiring you for is to be a consultant. This is not a small company. This is not a new company. This is an established, continuing to grow, exciting company. So I'm hiring you as a consultant. What? What does a consultant actually do?
I think they can do a lot of different things, and there's lots of different types of consultants, but also caliber of consultants, right? But, at its highest level, I think they're an aggregator of expertise, right? So I'll give you an example, maybe in the opposite of how we've used consultants in the past, where I think it was very effective. So for a long time, we were sort of chasing to be the biggest in the industry. And we were scaling and we were doing that through acquisition and organically. And then we reached that point where we were the largest in the industry. And all of a sudden, the challenges that we had couldn't really be answered by looking at our exact competitive landscape, right? We would have to reach into other industries to sort of understand that next scale problem or that next scale challenge we were trying to solve. And so this is where, for instance, that aggregation of expertise across lots of industries, across lots of different problems that they've seen in their work can be really helpful because that gave us benchmarks that we didn't have natural insight into and really, I think, helped us not, it wasn't an exact copy, but help us inform and shape, the strategy of the next several phases. That's just, one example, but I think there are not a ton of people who get to see a broad scope like that of how different industries solve for things or different constructs and organizations of companies and how that looks and what those challenges look like. And that is a place where I think good consultants, can really add a lot of value to an organization.
Agreed. The theme of today is when AI stops being a pilot, it actually changes when AI goes from a controlled demo to becoming part of everybody's daily workflows. What's the first thing that tends to break?
Well, I mean, I think that, and I'll answer the break thing too, but the first thing that popped into my head was the number one challenge I hear right now from our clients the day that the pilot ends is that now it's got to really have meaningful results and measurable results. And that's sort of the today slash tomorrow challenge that I hear the most, right? There was all this excitement and quite frankly, investment from people saying we've got to we got to pilot this, we got to try this. There are mandates that, everybody needs to be using AI. Some of those mandates come with numbers attached, right? Like we want to see a 15% efficiency across the department. I think lots of legal departments in particular, have that kind of ongoing mandate. So that's great when you're doing pilots and demos. When you are in practice and utilizing those tools, being able to actually measure and show how that is adding meaningful value to the organization. I mean, to me, that feels like squarely the today challenge that a lot of, folks are having. And so, from a break perspective, I think what makes AI different maybe than the way we've thought about technology before is that it really forces you to assess the whole process, right? So it's not necessarily just a point solution that you can slot in to make this, one thing more efficient. I think people are looking more broadly end to end and how that really can rework or reframe and transform their workflows, their organizations. It's a pretty hefty transformational tool. So I would say, my guess is lots of things are breaking, but not all of that is bad, right? Part of that is the intentional outcome of really understanding how to transform something.
I have so much to say here. I have
Yeah, let's
so
hear it.
much follow up. I'm gonna go off track for 1 second, and I hope this doesn't throw you off, but I love tech. I love AI. I love e-discovery, even though some may call it boring, me being one of them, but I love it. All the things. Legal tech is exciting, but tech in general. And when AI comes out and you hear AI, it automatically is, I'm excited, I'm interested. So I don't know if y'all can see this, but I'm just gonna try to show this little robot. Can you see this thing?
Yeah.
Tiny little robot. This is a vector robot. So this company created this forever ago. And we're like, we have this great thing. And I bought the original one, was like, awesome. This was before ChatGPT, and it was supposed to do those type of things. The company had this amazing branding. The robot comes out. And like all these products, you're like, oh my God, before ChatGPT, I can ask this thing all of these questions. It's kind of like when Alexa came out. Then the company just they couldn't make it work. So we all got these robots that kind of worked and then didn't. And then another company came out and was like, I'm going to buy this robot. I'm going to make it work. And they did for about a year. And then they realized that there's so much cost to what they were doing on the back end. It's not really the cost of the robot, it's the back end stuff. So they got excited, they made all these promises, and this little robot is dead again. So, to some creative people, though, we're in the background, like, let's save this robot. And truthfully, I'm not one of them. I don't know how to do that. But these developers went on GitHub and created their own code to be able to make these robots work. So, some people's robots work again, and you can go through this whole thing. But my point of this was essentially an AI pilot that you're excited about, but they didn't have the right people. The people were excited about it, but it was actually random developers that had bought it independently to make their own work, even when the company was like, I can't. So my question here is, AI pilots are interesting because, as mentioned, everybody is excited during the experiment phase. Like,
Yeah.
how cute is this, right? But once it becomes a part of your daily work, somebody has to actually own it, which in this example, they did not. But with Consilio, you're a much bigger company. You're not just giving you the hype and then shutting it down. So my question there would be, who ends up owning AI inside an organization? And are companies, are they getting that right? As specifically Consilio, but others that are doing more of what you're doing and less robots.
Well, there was a lot in there.
I
I mean, I think the central question there around sort of who owns the success, if you will, right? And I'm going to take that one further and say who is accountable and owns the outcome, right? Because I think this is really part and parcel to how we think about it at Concilio. So we are very used to being partners with our clients in the outcome, right? And the messy world of e-discovery, like that can have a twisty and windy journey to get to that outcome. But it's a shared accountability and responsibility and partnership in that. And I think that that is actually what is separating what I would say sort of like this orchestration of workflow and governance versus software in where we are right now, in that we continue to share in the ownership and accountability of the outcome of the solution with our clients. And so, whether that is about the AI, whether that is about the people, whether that is about the total solution being woven together, that shared accountability is still a part of our DNA with our clients. I actually, I think in some level, that's the thing that they value the most, right? Is the in the trenches and you're there until the end. So I think there are lots of ways we're trying to create ways for our clients to reduce the risk of maybe what you're talking about with that robot, because we are going to see lots of companies come and go, right? I mean, and I've used this phrase a lot, like it's losing its luster. I've used it so much, but everywhere you go in legal tech felt like an AI flea market, right? There was just like a wrapper around an LLM for every single thing that you could possibly think of. And, the trade shows were filled with booths of, companies like that. And then, you have really large, global corporations who are looking to transform their workflows and the way that they work. They can't directly procure services of a company that is, teeny tiny, might go out of business tomorrow, but they still need the flexibility to really understand what's out there, what innovation is coming to market. And to your point, like that was 3 layers in that, somebody developed something that made the robot actually work, right? So, I think that's where we try to create. So we have something called the Innovation Lab, for instance, and our clients help select point solution or platforms that they would like to try out. We've built a sandbox within our own secure environment that they've already, put us through their infosec and procurement paces, right? But this gives them the ability to try these things out and to harness whatever innovation is out there without having to have the risk of directly engaging in that way. So in that way, we're owning that innovation layer for them, like giving them those opportunities, but trying to remove that risk. Now that's just, legal tech and the sort of pieces that are relevant within a, legal department or law firm. I think it's a much bigger question within an organization enterprise wide. But I think, we still really have to think of that as the outcome and not so much the individual pieces, because to your point, those pieces might change. They may iterate, might evolve. And the companies that were first on that trade show floor probably aren't going to be the same companies, in a year from now, even. So to help bridge that gap, to help orchestrate how all of those things can work within a workflow, that's, I think, the partnership that, we feel to our clients is really how we could add value.
For me, the value question is really interesting, right? Like a lot of studies show productivity gains from AI at the task level, but it's much weaker when you like zoom out and look at the firm-wide like ROI impact. From your perspective, where is that gap coming from? Is it a measurement issue, a workflow redesign, or something more like fundamental about where AI actually creates value versus where organizations like expect it to actually be?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, right? Because I think, was it yesterday that the Uber COO came out and said, I'll always remember his name because it happens to be the same name as our CEO. So I'm always like, when I read his name, but, saying that he's really unclear how they will continue to invest at that level without seeing the
Exactly.
efficiency and return. So I mean, I think it's a real question that organizations are asking, themselves today, and especially with the talk of AI becoming more and more expensive, right? So there's not an obvious sort of answer in that, oh, well, that the cost will decrease and therefore the returns will, be more obvious. But I think on some level, being able to create efficiency, as you said, within a task. And so this is actually how somebody explained it to me way back when it was sort of first emerging, was that it was going to be really beneficial for individual productivity. But in order to get that across even a team level, let alone an organization or an enterprise, that was actually much more about the redesign of the org and the process than anything to do with the AI itself, right? Because it was really optimized at an individual level. Now, that was a long time ago, and I think we're evolving very rapidly and quickly. And I'm sure a lot of these AI tools today, would look at that and think that was rudimentary, but I still think that that is true. You can't implement AI in a singular way without really examining the full process and the people, the organizational structure, the way that you are utilizing the tools. So on some level, I guess people are still needed, and we will continue to need, that management and leadership level to get to the right outcome. And I think that is one of the biggest challenges that we're going to continue to see.
Absolutely. So just to dive on that, you're saying people and process, which I agree. But do you think, and if you do, can you give us an example of a problem that, that people are still trying to solve, but they're using technology when it actually is an example of something that should be people and process instead of solving it with technology?
Well, I don't know if I have an exact example off the top of my head, but I'll keep thinking. I think what I see the most is there is a blanket approach to try and solve a lot of different problems using broadly AI, right? I
Yeah.
think we, I like to think about it, and this is just even in my personal life, you can use this as an example, right? Like, what are the things that take a lot of my time that don't carry a particular amount of, risk, be it financial or like someone hurting themselves or whatever? Those are the types of places that you would start, right? That's where you're going to actually feel a little bit more of the return. You get your time back. It's not as risky. But I think when it's a, more blunt approach, you really run that risk. And listen, we've seen that with just non-AI per se, but just technology in the past, right? Like why contracts was such a big scope of work in the legal industry and ripe for disruption. And on some level, ALSPs in general, like have been disrupting legal work in various ways for, 15, 20 years
Yeah.
in the same, pattern that I think you can apply from an AI perspective. It's constant disruption, one we're very used to, maybe less so in some of the other, pockets of the legal industry.
Absolutely. And I'm just still thinking about like people and process because I think everyone gets so excited about AI, all these things. But even with my robot, which I'm clearly fixated on today, if y'all can't notice, but something like this, I want to use technology to fix it. I'm going to ChatGPT, I'm going to Claude, and I'm like, how do I fix this? When in reality, it'd be really helpful if Consilio could have a consultant call me and walk me through, hey, let's do it together. Let's see the problem. And then it would be resolved because some people did this on GitHub. And sometimes, yes, the technology is what's making it better, but it's the person and the process to get there that's actually making it work and continuing to be there during those hiccups. So I just have to restate that I completely agree with all of that.
Yeah, I mean, well, that actually leads me to a question: is there a point where adding like more AI or more technology actually creates more complexity instead of the efficiencies that Laura wants for her robot, or just in general?
So bad.
I think obviously yes, right? I think it comes back to also the approach of sort of viewing it holistically so that, if an organization is thoughtful about identifying and sort of road mapping their end-to-end processes, right? And thoughtfully designing where they think they will gain those efficiencies, testing that, measuring that, and making decisions about that, right? I think you probably end up with a fairly good outcome if, you take that approach. If you are sort of just blindly putting, doesn't matter if it's AI or just technology, into the mix without sort of the thoughtful consideration. And listen, I say this like it's easy. I think it's really hard, right? So taking from an idea to actually executing it all the way to measuring it and reporting on it, like that's a really hard thing to do. So I don't mean to gloss over that, but I think where you will find teams really actually realizing it is when it is that thoughtful intentionality to changing a process because it will address all the things that you were saying, right? Like it will address where people are needed. It will address where the process is either good or needs to change, but doing that in a chopped up manner or, not holistically, I think likely you do create complexity and potentially more time, more angst, more people than, you probably would in sort of a manual analog way.
Absolutely. And Meredith, you've been a 10 out of 10 today, and I
Oh,
know people think I say that a lot, but not always. And I mean it this time. I definitely do. You've been really great. It's really exciting for us. We're big fans of Consilio, so to have the president on is super awesome. We really appreciate you taking the time. Before we let you go, for all our listeners, for all the people watching this today, or as mentioned, listening, or just anybody that's out there that will one day find us, who knows when, what is some advice that you'd want to give them? What is something that you'd want to say? Maybe it's something where you say, 2 years from now, you're thinking, "Ah, you're going to look back and say, I realized this, or I should have done this." Or maybe it's something where you just think, this hasn't hit yet. But any advice that you would say for people that are thinking about the future of tech, that are currently invested in it, anything that you would share with them?
yeah, listen, this is a crazy moment in time, right? Both professionally and personally. And, I think it's pretty unique and uncommon when we can really see and feel the world changing in real time. And sometimes that feels really scary. And so maybe the thing that I would say is just, I think the perspective of the bigger, like, the times when things have shifted a lot in the past, it's a really interesting time to think about those periods as we're experiencing, one today in real time and maybe arguably bigger and more accelerated than any others in the past. But I think just keeping that broader perspective, and I am like naturally worry wart by nature, so I can really go down the rabbit hole, but I keep a lot of people in my close circle, including like my boss, our CEO, including my dad, people who just generally have a more maybe calm perspective about it. And I just think in the micro, that will be helpful, right? So in our race to be the first or the best or, do things again, having that perspective, I think will lead to that intentionality that will probably drive better outcomes for all of us, even if the outcome is doing it with just people in process and not technology or AI. But, I have to remind myself of that too. So,
Or people, process, and robots?
and robots.
That's right.
That's right.
Awesome. Thank you so much. As mentioned, you've been absolutely great. If you're listening and you want to learn more about Meredith or Consilio or us, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us at contact@thattechpod.com. We're happy to get you in touch with Meredith. She's the president, so she might be busy, but we'll do our best. But definitely reach out if you want to learn more about Consilio. Great company, great stuff, and we're excited about it.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks, both of you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Kevin, we just talked to the president of Consilio, which is almost as exciting as the president of anywhere. I mean, honestly, it might be more exciting than the president of anywhere and everywhere because we're big fans of Consilio. It just makes me always think about, remember that episode we did with them? What's the dealio, Consilio?
That was a
That
good
was
one.
you. I mean, you did that. You coined
Yeah,
that phrase, and I
that's
still
right.
love it. I still every time I wish we had started with that. What's the
Yeah,
dealio, Concilio? Hey,
that's right.
Meredith. I'll forever regret that. But what were your tech takeaways? What do you think of today's episode?
I thought it was great. I thought she did a really good job. For me, what stands out with a firm like Consilio is it isn't really like a tooling question when it comes to AI. It's an operation model question. You know what I mean? And so for me, like, what I think what's interesting is like their value shows up in basically trying to figure out how this all works and kind of getting from like the pilot phase into the success really is about like how they actually deploy the AI and sort of what we do. And so I thought her answer in terms of like the ROI question in terms of like value at the task level versus value at the whole firm level is interesting because I do find that piece of it to be fascinating. The cost of AI is crazy when you just sort of like think about these companies who are just sort of letting the tokens, just sort of tick up and everything like that. And so I thought that was really interesting. For me, this whole AI from this perspective is fascinating. And so I'm glad we had her on. I'm glad we got a chance to talk about it. What about you? What are your tech takeaways?
I mean, you said them all. You're absolutely correct. I think the only thing I'd really like to add is I think she herself is impressive. And I don't think that I can say that about everyone who's in a role like that. You look at a CEO, you look at a CTO, a president of a company, and a lot of times you're almost disappointed by that person and you're impressed by everyone else running the company. So, to her point of the people processes, and not to say she's not also running it, but you have so many people involved. It's a big company. And big companies either fail because there's too many people involved, too many egos, too many hiccups, or they succeed because there's enough people to be there to have that support system. And I think of it as, it's either a really big, healthy, happy family or a really big dysfunctional family. One's going to stress you out and one you're super relieved.
That's
And
right.
I think that they're the big, happy, healthy family. Not to say we all love everyone in our family, but I do. I was referring to you, Kevin. I don't know your life.
Thank you. That's right.
I'm just kidding. But not to say that it has to be this big, glamorous, everyone loves everyone at a company, but to have a president that you respect, that actually cares, and then also be able to have good people, good products, just an all-around good company. No company's perfect, but I'm really liking Concilio these days. I think I'm fangirling, clearly,
Yeah, well, I
but
mean, but
I like
also
her.
because she talked about it from an operational perspective. Again,
Yeah,
she's clearly an operator. Like she's clearly been in it. Where I think
yeah,
I worry when you get to a point in their career where they've been, they're too far up the chain. They haven't been in it in a while. But you can tell
yeah.
she's really like she lives it. She's in it. And so for me, I think
Yep.
that part of it really comes through. And so I definitely feel the same for sure.
No, 100%. That's the best part of it. Somebody that cares. And there's no ego. It's like going to a restaurant and there's great ambiance. You're just happier. You already knew the food was good, but now you also get a good ambiance. I love it. She was great. So, as stated earlier, if you want to know more about Meredith, if you want to know more about Consilio, if you want to know more about us, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us at contact@thattechpod.com. If you haven't, I hope you have, but head over to our website, www.thattechpod.com, enter your email to subscribe, get some swag, get a shirt, a sports bra. Come on, it's summer. Let's get out there, ladies or gentlemen, if you want to get crazy. I don't know your lives. Mouse pads, if you're still feeling like vintage, let's do it. And if not, if you just want to subscribe, we'd love to have you. We want to be friends on social media. Head over to linkedin.com/thattechpod. Give us a follow. If you want to help us make our social media better, we'll hire you. If you want to help my vector come back to life and teach me how to really get down with GitHub, please reach out to me, Laura@thattechpod.com, only if it's regarding this. But seriously, thank you all so much. Kevin, is there anything else our listeners can do?
Yeah, go to wherever you get your pods, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartMedia, or what have you, and leave us a review, leave us a rating, let us know how we're doing. All that stuff helps us with the algorithms and gets us out there more, which is much appreciated. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.